Hey, so this is going to be a sensitive video today, involving real people in my life, and sensitive situations, disagreements and things and tensions that are active. So I'm going to use fake names because I want to talk about this, but to protect everybody involved. These are all going to be fake names. Happy Thursday, everybody. It's Ptony, your friendly Catholic vlogger. If you notice a lot of shaking, well, my hands are shaking, so I apologize. I'm trying to stay steady. There's a group of about 6 people. We've known each other since all the way back in high school, and we're close. We got to be close. We're going to stay close. We're going to know each other for the rest of our lives. We've started from similar places, more or less, but now there's a certain amount of tension as we find our own niches in the world. For example, Harry is no longer Catholic, Frank is anti-vaccine, and I'm trying to build a career in YouTube. So the group, we worry about, well, what's going to happen to Harry's soul, what's going to happen to Frank's kids, and what's going to happen to my career. Am I going to end up in poverty? Are Frank's kids going to be all right? And is Harry's eternity going to be all right? And the question is, when these sorts of tensions arise among people that are close to each other, what do you do with them? Now, of course, I assume that I'm talking to a Catholic audience, so let's talk about Harry for a second. Harry not being Catholic is hard. It's just kind of a hard thing to process. It's hard to know what to do. When questions of salvation come up, I don't know what to say when we start talking about like what's going to happen with Harry's soul. On a certain level, like I think my gut instinct is to say, hey, look, ultimately that's between God and Harry. I cannot take responsibility for the salvation of his soul. I can wonder about baptism of desire and honestly seeking God, and how accurate of a perception does Harry have of the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith. Other members of this group, of course, I mean, take it as much more of a burden and a responsibility. We, as close companions of Harry, have a duty to reach out to him and to present the faith in a way that answers his doubts. Let's phrase it that way. My hands-off approach of saying, well, I mean, yes, pray for him, absolutely, but ultimately it's a question between him and God. I mean, that has a dark, ominous overtone to it, because some very real consequences could potentially come from that, right? Which are not pleasant to talk about. So what do we do with that? A couple approaches that we've tried and I personally have never found entirely satisfactory. Well, confront him directly, just hash it out. Usually that leads nowhere really fast and causes a lot of hurt feelings, and we end up not talking for a long time. And like, what are we supposed to do with that? Another method is to just wait and bide our time and look for those opportunities to bring faith type words into conversations. I really intensely don't like that, though, and here's why. Remember, I have a tension in this group where I'm the one that the group thinks is wrong also, specifically with YouTube. And sometimes it feels like with anything that happens in the world of YouTube, I can't talk to people that are really important to me in my life about it, like at all. I can't, right? Because they disapprove, which is fine. Like, I can't tell people to think one way or another. I can't tell them to give me their approval for something that they don't believe in, right? Free will and free thought and things. But sometimes it feels like they'll listen to certain things and they'll keep their finger on the pulse and they'll look for the weaknesses and the hardships and the low points of my YouTube work so that they can bring that up and say, hey, look, see, your decisions are going to end in disaster. And so sometimes with this group, I live in fear of, are they just scrutinizing me? Are they just waiting for those opportunities to prove to me that I'm wrong? So with Harry, I don't want to just bide my time and wait for those opportunities to just insert the truth into the conversation, because I think that is something that Harry will pick up on, and it'll put him in a defensive and vulnerable position where he doesn't know if a conversation is genuine or if it's a conversation where we're looking for an opportunity to almost pounce. The idea of just letting things lie, well, that can be painful too, right? I mean, as a very poignant example, okay, so Frank, he's anti-vaccine. Frank likes to live a little bit more off the grid than your average person, right? Likes to find ways to raise their own food, which is great. Not necessarily knowing how it works, though, sometimes is the concern of the group, and some very real health concerns come up in that atmosphere. We've legitimately wondered about the safety of Frank's kids. Wondered if we had an obligation to take some very concrete steps to get third parties involved. And things are much better at this point. Like, you don't need to call CPA or anything, right? Things have gotten better. But at particular low moments, that was what was on our mind. If we just sit and do nothing and just let each do their own, potentially are some people going to get irreversibly hurt? And those sorts of questions are just as real when it comes to Harry's faith, when it comes to my career. The group wonders, am I going to end up in the streets in poverty? The group wonders, is Harry going to end up... I mean, I don't want to say it. I don't want to go there. But are those things that the group needs to worry about? Another solution, I don't like this one either. We could just say, hey, let's part ways. We're obviously very different people. This is just going to be hard and awkward no matter what we do. We have different values. We have made different decisions, and I don't know what we have in common that we can build on. But if you'll allow me, let's just not explore that option. And I'm just going to keep my reasons veiled. But certainly I think that, think of family, think of marriage, think of other very close relationships. Like, sometimes it isn't an option just to part ways, or at least, if at all avoidable, it's not an option worth exploring. These are really big tensions that are kind of a backdrop in my life. And, as I reflect on myself, I think that they're definitely a big part of why disagreement is such a fascinating topic to me. How do we disagree in a healthy and constructive way? I don't think that it works to just agree to disagree, because we've got these huge potential consequences that are on the line. I also don't think it always works to just, use the tough love approach of, well, this is the truth and you gotta listen to me. I mean, because from direct experience, that doesn't work. Look at me in my case. Like, all right, so the direct tough love approach for the group would be, Peter, you gotta stop making YouTube videos. You just got to. I'm not okay with that. And it is not really a fair comparison. Like, we're talking about faith versus career. Okay, those are fairly different. We're talking about career versus raising kids versus faith. These are all very different parts of life, but I think there also are certain similarities that we can draw out, and that's that there are huge overarching consequences that a large part of the group fears and is worried about. And the one person in the group that's on the other side of the question doesn't have the same regard for, or perhaps has an equal and opposite fear, or an equal and opposite love, or passion, and that's put us in a spot where the tough love approach, I just don't think will work. So there, what's takeaways from this video? I guess I'm not making this video to explain exactly what the right approach is to solve disagreement. I think more of this video is just to highlight that, hey, look, sometimes disagreements are hard, and it's important to recognize that disagreements can cause an enormous amount of tension in relationships. And usually that's because, well, I would say even always, that's because we care about the person and we don't want these negative consequences to happen in their lives. That's where the harshest disagreements arise. And so in my own explorations to figure out what it looks like to disagree in a constructive and healthy way, that's something that's important to always remember. The tension, ultimately, in some strange, darkly poetic way, is a result of us loving each other. Thanks so much for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons who, this is very related to this video. In my own case, my own tension with this group, whether or not this YouTube thing can become something that really sustains me in my life is not a question of how many people don't believe in me. It's a question of how many people do believe in me. And these 4 people that are my patrons are strong and encouraging evidence that there are people that do believe in me. These people do believe in me, right? Which is exhilarating and wonderful and awfully encouraging. Okay, so their names are in a sack. I'm gonna draw out one randomly. Joseph A. Thanks so much for your support. You mean a lot to me. This summer I'm doing a campaign to grow my Patreon team. My goal is 50 patrons by the end of the summer, which means I expect about 500 phone calls. If you believe in my mission, and if you want to be a part of it, I highly recommend checking out my Patreon page. You can also contact me in the comments and we can talk about it. Here's a link to the Patreon page. Here's also a link to another video. Here's a link to subscribe. I'm so happy that people watch these videos. It's very flattering and encouraging. God bless and ciao.